What say is the defendant at the bar leaving the scene after accident resulting in death? The defendant not guilty or guilty? So say you, Mr. Foreman? So say you all?
The standard in the civil lawsuit is far different than the beyond a reasonable doubt standard applicable in the criminal case. So the hurdles that the O'Keefe family will have to overcome are lesser than the prosecution has in the criminal case.
And the second thing I want to say is no one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than I have, and my team. Thank you.
Karen Reed won the criminal trial. She won her liberty, her freedom, right? But a trial is supposed to be a search for the truth. But if the one accused of committing the crime is found not guilty, did the truth come out inside the courtroom? Do we have an answer as to what happened to John O'Keefe? Could that answer come from somewhere else? Could it come from a civil lawsuit? Karen Reed is being sued by the O'Keefes. She won't have the same dream defense team. Here is her new attorneys, Damon Seligson, Charles Waters, Aaron Rosenberg. That's part of her team that'll defend her in this civil case. Let's talk about the civil case and what we may learn and whether or not we'll get closer to the truth. Still with me, Matthew Mangino, Margaret McLean, and Erica Wilson. Erica, let me ask you, and this kind of goes both ways here, right? Because if you believe that John O'Keefe was killed by Karen Reed, will the O'Keefes and their defense team have an opportunity to dive deeper into getting to the truth by subpoenaing, calling to testify, deposing Karen Reed and her parents? On the other side, if you believe that John O'Keefe was killed by people in 34 Fairview, will Karen Reed and her attorneys be able to subpoena and depose all the people that were inside the house that night?
Both things are true. So we're looking at two completely different burdens of proof here. The discovery latitude that you have in a civil case is far greater than what you would have in a criminal case. And so, yes, so she will have the opportunity to vindicate herself in ways in which she would not have been able to do in a criminal case. Because in a criminal case, you would have to put on a case in chief, and that opens up a whole bunch of other doors, and you don't necessarily want to get into that. But here, she can, her platform has been that he was killed by police officers. So now she has her opportunity, her day in court again, to be able to establish that. Same thing is true with his family in terms of being able to establish whether her being civilly responsible for his death, is not the same as being criminally responsible. So they still have a shot at this. And to me, the amount that they're suing for is so nominal. I believe it to be just probably the policy limits that she had on her vehicle at the particular time, that it just seems to be symbolic, and that this family just really just wants to kind of get some closure and have a court of law say that she was responsible for his death.
Absolutely. If you believe she killed your son, you want a sense of justice in some way. You want some jury to come back and say what happened. Let me ask you, Margaret McLean, how much more, if this goes to trial, will we learn about that night?
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that the civil case was filed in Plymouth County, so it's no longer in Norfolk County, which I think will benefit the O'Keefes. Plymouth County happens to be my county, and I think a change of venue, first of all, would have been good. But, you know, we've got depositions, so we're going to be learning a lot more about, you know, that came out, the lot that came out in trial 1, so it'd be kind of like a combination between trial 1 and trial 2.
But there were so many limitations on questions. There were so many limitations in both trials about what I mean, the jury couldn't even find out about the federal investigation. I mean, are both sides going to have, like Erica said, much more latitude? And as a result, are we going to find out more? Are people going to be compelled to testify this time around?
They'll be subpoenaed to testify, absolutely. And Karen Reed's deposition will be taken. So we'll learn about what her story really is, other than those Dateline videos, you know, that we saw in the second trial. But a lot more will come out. However, I still think the O'Keefes have a strong case because, again, based on the data and the evidence, it was really hard to prove that anything happened inside 34 Fairview. And all, you know, again, all that will come out, but we might learn some other things, like about the phones, for example, what really happened with Brian Albert's phone and Higgins' phone. Did he really go to the military base to throw out his trash? Or was he deliberately trying to get rid of his phone? So a lot of those types of questions will be answered. But as far as, planting evidence at the scene, I still think, according to the timeline, there was not enough time for Proctor
we can argue
to plant that evidence.
The facts of the case.
Well, of
I want to
course.
know what more we're going to learn here. Let me ask you, Matt Mangino. Judge Cannoni limited what the defense could do in their own discovery in getting hands on phone records. I mean, they wanted records of all the people that were at 34 Fairview. Will they be able to fully investigate their third-party culprit allegations in the civil case that was limited by Judge Cannoni in the first two trials?
Yeah, they certainly are going to be able to learn more about that, because when you're dealing with a civil trial and a civil deposition, the questions that you ask and the information that has to be furnished doesn't have to necessarily be relevant to the case, but could lead to relevant evidence. And that's a big difference. And the other thing is, the O'Keeffes want Karen Reed to testify under oath, and she's going to have to do that in a deposition. And that, I think, is key.
And her
here,
parents, and her parents as well.
Well, anybody who could have information that might lead to relevant information in the civil case can be subject to discovery, depositions, interrogatories, so many different means to gain this information.
So the search for the truth will be a little bit deeper and maybe a little more thorough and not as limited as it was in the first two trials.